Welcome to the Harold Clurman Seminar in Theater. I'm Ed Wilson, and my guest is one of America's most talented playwrights, Marsha Norman. Welcome, Marsha.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. I think probably your two best-known plays are Getting Out, about a young woman who got out of prison, and Night Mother, which won the Susan Smith Blackburn Prize and the Pulitzer Prize and many other awards. And I presume both of those plays have been done all over this country and indeed all over the world.
Absolutely, there.
But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of your other plays.
Good.
And both maybe the ones that came before Night Mother and after Getting Out, and some of the things you've been working on recently. I think one of the plays you've been working on is called Sarah and Abraham.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, you read a portion of that to
That's right.
class.
That's right. I came to class and read
That's
some of it.
right. Tell us a little about Sarah and Abraham.
Sarah and Abraham is about the feisty little theater troupe like Steppenwolf or one of those in a Midwestern city that we don't know about in the middle of a blizzard. This is a small resident company of fanatics, really, people who
Fanatical about the theater?
About the theater, and the way they work. They improvise their way to their plays. And so this time they've chosen the subject Sarah and Abraham, the Bible story. They have in their midst for this production an actress from California, starlet, if you will.
Is she visiting the troupe?
She is, and their desire to bring in some ticket money and get people in seats. She's there, so she's kind of an outsider. And the piece begins in a rehearsal hall as they come in from the blizzard and take off their coats and say, well, okay, what are we doing now and what do the costumes look like? The director explains that he's been wanting to do this for a long time. He just didn't have the right people, but now that he has this gorgeous Hollywood actress and he has his two old standbys, his leading actress and her husband, who's also in the company, he can do it now. He can do it, and he can tell the story of who was Sarah and who was Abraham and what the hell happened to them, right, is what he says. So the play is then the next, it proceeds scene by scene to the final moment, which is the full production value, the final scene in the play that they create. So that, in a sense, what happens as you watch, this piece materializes. The costumes come out of the trunks. This bare rehearsal space, this shabby-looking, awful thing, turns into this Bronze Age desert kingdom. The play begins in the actors' mouths as they're sort of goofing off and trying to figure out what Sarah would have to say to Abraham. They hear parts of the story. Gradually, the playwright, who is also a character in the piece, begins to supply the language, and you watch the play evolve. Now, what happens, really, is that you watch the marriage of this theatrical couple disintegrate, and you watch the woman, in a sense, steps down from her role as leading actress of this company and enters private life forever, and the man goes on to become, the great and celebrated star that Abraham, of course, became.
So there's a parallel between
yes.
the Sarah and Abraham story and between what happens in
But
real life to these actors. There must be a lot about the creation of a theatrical piece in this.
There is. I mean, somebody said to me, they did a reading of it a while ago, and a person from a newspaper said to me, well, wait a minute, you said that you always wrote about people who didn't have a voice of their own, couldn't speak for themselves, and so isn't this aren't you really just leaving behind your tradition? And I said, well, who has less of a voice than the actors in the plays that I write? I mean, this is my giving them a chance to say, this is us back here. We're people back here. Our lives are falling apart. Our hearts are breaking, and yet we are presenting to you these noble characters who somehow had another idea about how to live.
So it's really both about the process of creating a theater piece, the lives of actors and actresses and directors,
right?
But it's also the biblical story.
Well,
is it a reinterpretation of the biblical story?
No. I tell the biblical story in a quite straightforward way. My reading of the biblical story.
I was going to say, don't you give Sarah?
Is that it's the story of a powerful woman in a marriage, and Sarah You know, I mean, then the Bible scholars, again, you know, I do so much research, and this...
you did a great deal of biblical research for this?
There are wonderful new, there's wonderful new work about the Bible. I mean, one of the simple facts that's established now is that Sarah was a Mesopotamian priestess, you know, that she was in charge. She was, you know, she did the rituals, she made it rain, she made the crops grow, she did that. And that she lived during a time when, in fact, things changed and people stopped worshiping the moon, started worshiping the sun, started worshiping commerce, not farming. Do you know? I mean, then that was a real time when men, because of their, who knows, talents, their own power came into control. And
in other words, the control shifted from the woman to the man historically at this period.
I mean, I really believe that what happened at some point back there was that the mysteries were given over for the certainties, you know, the mysteries of rain to the certainties of trade.
Now, this brings us to a subject, which is namely the whole notion of women's theater and women in the theater, because you are now such a to use a popular term, role model, I think, and you're so involved because you have become so well known. The question of female aesthetics and the whole question of the role of women in the theater and the fact that there aren't that many women playwrights whose work is being done, there aren't that many women directors. What are some of your feelings about that? And have they changed over the years, your feelings about your responsibility as a woman writer?
Well, I didn't ever write anything because I felt I had to, because I wanted to make a point of any kind.
A political point.
Right, right. I only was writing stories that I knew and moments of courage that I was in awe of. And women live courageous lives. And that courage, I mean, what? You have to look back at, well, you say, okay, it's Medea and Hedda Gabler. I mean, are those the two courageous moments in the women's theatrical history in the past? No, I mean, that's not enough. I'm greatly troubled by the fact that there are not more young women coming up to write for the theater.
Do you think they're not being given a chance, or do you think they're? What do you think is the reason for that?
Well, I don't know. I think that there are a couple of possible explanations. One is it's a very demanding life in terms of time, in terms of mobility. I mean, you have to be able to move around. If you have children and home to take care of, that's something that you might very well choose to do, other than go and see a production in some place that far away. Do you know? I mean, those are very real choices, and women choose those. Women make their choices in a different way, I think, than men do. I mean, it's very easy for women and very right, you know, and powerful for women to say, I need to be with this child, I need to be in this house, and this is what I'm going to do now. So that, in a sense, there's a great portion of women who would be telling stories, who are doing something that they, and we all would say, is as important.
Putting aside the question of female aesthetics,
right.
I think I do hear you saying there's a different sensibility and a different experience of the world that a woman has.
Absolutely.
And you did say, I'm just going to quote now a couple of things you said in an interview once, on this subject. The things we as women know best have not been perceived to be of critical value to society. The mother-daughter relationship is a perfect example of that. It is one of the world's great mysteries. It has confused and confounded men and women for centuries and centuries, and yet it has not been perceived to have critical impact on either the life of the family or the survival of the family. I mean, do you...
Oh, absolutely.
And then you said one other thing here I wanted to quote. As women, our historical role has been to clean up the mess. Whether it's the mess left by war or death or children or sickness, I think the violence you see in plays by women is a direct reflection of that historical role. We are not afraid to look under the bed or to wash the sheets. We know that life is messy. And do you feel that this is something that men do not fully understand and appreciate for the most part?
Well, I think that men are making the mess, if you know what I mean. I mean, men are doing the shooting, doing the kills, staging the wars, doing that. I mean, that kind of conquering, that kind of that kind of need to triumph, need to make a mark, need to get more territory, need to be, that kind of acquisitiveness. I mean, the women that I know are not interested in that. And it's not, that doesn't make us less valuable. It's just not something that we're interested in. I did not, arrive on the earth with the idea that I had to make my mark, that I had to, and I still don't have the sense that I have to be victorious, that I have to win anything or beat anybody. I mean, this is just a difference in the way that, women have other values that are that have much more to do with long-term survival, that have much more to do with the protecting and the protecting of a kind of central core of human existence, of feeling of passing on valuable information.
Let me ask you a question about you as a writer, because you now have a son, Angus.
Right.
You're a mother at this point. You wrote a lot about the mother-daughter relationship in the past, in both Getting Out and in Night Mother and elsewhere. But now you have this son. Has that changed your attitude toward? Has it changed? Well, first of all, has it been a problem in terms of your writing, in terms of time and attention?
Well, I've had to get a lot better. I've had to get it. It used to be in my life that I didn't want to do anything but work. And that's not true anymore. I really love to be with this little boy. I really love to watch him learning the language, sort of as he sees it, sort of devising it, I mean, I find that more interesting than anything I know. And
So that writing is not now, it doesn't occupy the position of priority that it did once in your life quite so.
Well, now I have a choice.
Right.
This is how it is. Before I didn't. Before it was all about work. And that was very easy, and I was very fortunate because I got a lot of work done in that time. But more fortunate that I didn't get out of my life without having this little boy. It's, I know that the work that I've done in the last year has been as good as anything I've ever done. Like I said, it's just the choices just are harder now. But what I find is that more and more of us are working with women who also have children. So that in fact we all make our decisions based on what's easy for us and good for us. And when we have work experiences, it's easy to we're looking out for that. How can we do our work and be with our children? Because we will not say that our work is more important than our children.
When you are, in terms of your work patterns now, now do you write, you used to, do you write in longhand and then use the computer, or do you use the computer to start with, or how do you, a word processor? How do you write
It's really still the same. I use the computer for the simple things. I use the longhand for the really tough emotional moments.
Now, now explain that just a little bit when you say the simple things.
Well, I mean, if I'm doing a cast list, if I'm watch this, see, I mean, my hands immediately begin to go. If I want to do a sketch of a scene, if I want to make, that kind of work. But when I come to something that's a very difficult thing to say, when I'm looking for exactly the right. Well, I'll give you an example from Sarah and Abraham. There's a moment when the actor says to her, when Abraham says to Sarah, only they're talking as Cliff and Kitty, he says, I have to come by the house sometime and get some things. And she says, not the cat. And he says, 10 years together and all you want is the cat. And she says, what she says next is one of those things you can only write in longhand, right? I mean, because you think about it for days, you can't just, and what she says is, it's not all I want, but the rest of it won't sit in my lap. Right?
Right.
Now, that's not...
There's no way that it would have come out on the word processor.
No, never, never.
Does this sort of tactile notion of writing there mean something to you at a moment like, or in a situation like that?
Right. It also, I think that people can comprehend at about the same speed that the human hand can write. And I think that on a computer, when I first got my computer years and years and years ago, I fell right into the trap of writing great, long, complicated, fancy sentences that the computer appreciated and that were just, left everybody else cold.
particularly on stage. Now, when